there has been a song that's been on my heart all morning, and Sam Cooke sang it, and it goes like this: I was born by the river in a little tent. Oh, and just like that river, I've been running ever since.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Bar podcast. I'm your host, Anissa Tova. Boy, today's guest, he has lit up Broadway as George Washington in Hamilton, Marvin Gaye in Motown the Musical. He is a Yale School of Drama grad, a fierce advocate for social justice. He's a co-founder of Indefined and just performed Motown hits at Carnegie Hall. But you know what? We're not here to just read off a resume. We're going deep, as we always do. We're going into purpose, identity, and really the moments behind these milestones. Bryan Terrell Clark, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's good to be here. How are you?
Doing great.
Good.
This is great. I like to go beyond the headlines, and I don't even like to read the headlines. And
Yeah.
I just know we're connected on Instagram, and I love the stuff that you put out there.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I love it. And it really makes you think. So, tell me your story, not the polished bio, the real one. Who were you before all of this?
Who was I before all this? Well, I was born in Baltimore, Maryland. I lived in Baltimore County, and I think I'm a product of both my mother and my father. My mother was a school teacher who became a principal. She is a woman of principles. She was a Sunday school teacher in church who became a minister. And for my mother, integrity, honesty, living in alignment with God was such an important factor in her identity. It was who she was. And I also had a father who did not think about education or church in the same way. He was a blue collar man. And we found out about 7 years into their marriage. So around the time I was around 6 or 7 years old, that he was a drug dealer. And he was hiding the fact that he was dealing drugs, at work, and until he was hooked on drugs.
Mm.
And during that time of 22 rehab visits over 2 decades, my mother stood by his side in principle. Um, Halfway through that situation, I was kind of like, "Hey, I know I'm the child here, but I'm kind of done." you know,
Yeah.
I understand standing by your man for sickness and health and all of that, but this is getting a little out of hand. And as time progressed, I think during their most tumultuous time as a young person is when I lost my voice. I felt unheard. I felt unseen. I felt like they were under the weight of trying to save their marriage, but also in survival mode economically. And so during that time, the arts was kind of like my escape. The arts was my safe haven. And so I remember my aunt Brenda, who always says, if you ever mention your first time acting, you have to say my name. So thank you, Aunt Brenda, for buying my first improv class. But that class helped me to find a safe space. It helped me to find my own inner world. I think sometimes as young people, when you have a lot going on in your home or there's a lot going on in the world, it's so loud you can't even hear your own voice. But any kind of artistic discipline teaches you how to listen to yourself and how to channel that. And so I got that at a really young age. It was liberating for me. And when I realized that moving from middle school, taking classes to a performing arts high school, I realized that the thing that gave me a sense of purpose and a sense of igniting my passion was the arts. And it wasn't until I really got to college that I realized that there are places around the world that are being targeted and stripped of the arts, that there are spaces in our country and spaces around the world that do not believe that art is transformative. I look at art as our one of our earliest forms of technology. I mean, the way we use story is the way we come up with marketing, branding. It's the way we shift information from one space to another space in technology. It's all transmitting information. It's all storytelling. And I believe one of our earliest technologies is, storytelling. And so
Yeah.
in my journey in all of that, I didn't realize that me being who I was a Black queer man in America, just me being fashioned in this body and finding my voice and my purpose in the arts and understanding the power of storytelling. I didn't know that all of that wrapped up in one body by itself is political.
Hmm.
And I think when your beinghood is being politicized, not a topic, not we're just disagreeing on political arguments. I'm talking about when your very being, your humanity, is being under legislation. It changes how you view the landscape. And so for me, arts gave me my voice, it gave me my passion. But as I stepped into my identity,
Hmm.
it was the meeting of my identity with my passion that helped me understand my purpose. And I didn't want any person on the planet to feel like they had to be marginalized, whoever you are. And I wanted everyone to have access to the arts because it gives us access to ourselves. So if we were going deeper and deeper and deeper, that's what I would say. But if we were at a cocktail party, I would say, hey, I'm from Maryland, I'm an actor. So I gave you the long answer. Who are you?
Yeah.
That's who I am.
You know what? You actually, it's interesting what you said, that the last part is, I think it makes people feel uncomfortable, being truly who you are. Like the way I approach this podcast, is I want to know very little about who it is that I'll be talking to, for a
Hmm.
reason, because I
Hmm.
want to I want to see the raw, the real, what's behind. I don't give
Hmm.
two shits about the titles, but
Yeah.
it's how you became who you are today, and it's you've expressed yourself, and that must have not been easy, back then.
No, no, not at all. I think it's a really brave thing to be who you really are. I
Yeah.
think it's a brave thing to step into your authenticity because it's an unknown place, as we grow up, we're kind of taught the role we're supposed to play. And in these little ways from our parents all the way to our jobs, we get incentives for behaving in the way that people want us to behave. And unfortunately, some of us, it's not even in our behavior, it's not even in our practiced identity, literally how we show up in the world, sometimes visibly. Me being a Black man, that's not something that I can, discipline my way out of. I think that there's a lot of social politics that go along with code shifting and linguistic capital. And so you find Black people having to conform to versions of whiteness,
Hmm.
especially when I was growing up, the 80s, the 90s, come on. People were literally shifting who they were at work so they could talk and be who they was at home. You know what I mean? And you could
Yeah.
hear it in the switching of the code of the voice. I think we're in a place right now where all that's out the window. I think
Yeah.
the younger generation understands that authenticity is power.
Hmm.
And so it's not just about conforming to old ideals. I think it's finding the marriage in living freely in your authenticity, but also understanding what you really want life to be, and then adding discipline to that journey. And then I think there's something in the middle of that combination that looks like the life you live. It's who you really are
Hmm.
mixed with your desire and what you want, and how that physically shows up in the actions you take in your life.
Yeah.
I think your perspective of those two things is what your life looks like. And I think when a person like me shows up, um, it's only threatening to those who are a little afraid of walking in their authenticity. But for those who've been waiting for somebody that looks like them, somebody that sounds like them, somebody that resonates with their spirit, um, when I show up, it feels like freedom. And I've had many examples of that in my life, that have become great friends and mentors. Courtney Vance and Angela Bassett, they went to Yale School of Drama. And my second year in school, I got a chance to do a show with them and sit under their hearts and their excellence. And I learned a lot about who I wanted to be as an artist. I became friends with Billy Porter's sister in college. And we became best friends. And I met him and started working with him. He was initially a director when I met him. And although I knew that he was an amazing performer, he's also an amazing director. And I was in about two or three of his shows. And you talk about walking in authenticity. I
Yeah.
mean, Billy Porter is a a trailblazer. He's literally a blazing fire of what it means to be brave enough to be all that you are, right? And then you have Coleman Domingo, who is this quiet fire that is
Hmm.
so powerfully artistic that he begins to not just show up as his authentic self, but he begins to shift culture. I mean, we literally had the Met Gala this last year focused on essentially the power of Black male fashion, dandyism.
Yes.
So the Met Gala is a reflection of who Coleman is and what Coleman represents. And so, yeah, when I talk, it might sound like, some high guy talking a lot of like inspirational foo-foo stuff, but I'm really grateful because I have examples of what I'm talking about living in my life. And so the marriage of my discipline and my principles and all those things that my mother is, and the desire for some level of balance and escapism that my father must have been looking for
Mm.
without the proper devices, without the proper
Yeah.
vessels, right? Without the proper avenues to channel that journey. Um, I'm a product of both. And I'm learning how to marry both the light and the shadow, both the discipline and the freedom. And I think that as we continue to kind of journey forward as artists, it's almost our job to just speak it and be it and allow the world to consume it as content. That's the trick. I think that is sitting between the balance of like deep artists and then social media influencers.
Yes.
I think the mission can be the same. It's just implemented differently. And I sit in a cross section of that as an artist that now lives in 2025. You know?
That takes so much courage. A personal example, I mean, my son he passed away, unfortunately,
I'm
3
sorry
years
to hear that.
ago. Thank you.
So
He
sorry.
was a biracial man who struggled with his identity and felt like he needed to conform to one or the other. And then eventually, started sort of numbing himself. And I think like many, it's like I really want to be authentic, but I don't know what that means and how I would be accepted. And it was more complicated than that. He served and PTSD and all that. So
Mm.
I feel what you're saying is you came from it must have been very confusing environment, and you found your path, and the path is really just letting your voice out, your expression, and you found an avenue to do that. And that's really what it is. I've interviewed many up and coming artists, and I said, so how do you how is the industry, how
Yeah,
are you showing up? And there is this conflict between the need to make money and being sort of commercialized and putting out what will sell and generate the following, the fake following,
yeah,
and the urge to want to be myself. And maybe it's not as popular, and you seem to have found that path.
yeah. I think there's a joy in the journey that we don't talk about. I think
Oh.
what ends up happening is we over romanticize the struggle of life and the conflict of life. And I think anytime you're trying to grow, I don't care what that is. I don't care if you're trying to grow in business. I don't care if you're trying to grow in self-development. I don't care if you're trying to grow in spirituality or authenticity. There's always a moment of resistance where you're letting go or shedding the old, or you're having to be aware that you just don't know. And so there's a lot to learn. There's a learning curve, right, in all those journeys. I think what's tricky is that we romanticize the struggle, but we don't romanticize the awakening. We don't romanticize what we learn along the journey, right? And so I think there is a world where a lot of artists feel like, ugh, I'm going to be such a starving artist. I don't know whether I need to do the things that are going to make me money or do the things that I really want to do, right? And then there are those of us who follow our passion, and this is maybe where my mother's faith comes in.
Mm.
I follow that passion and I respond to what shows up.
Mm.
I respond to what shows up. I go to the audition, I give my authentic best, I book it or I don't book it. What ends up happening in this magical way is you look back over your life and someone begins to name the things that you've done in the past, like you just did at the intro. And I look back and I say, every one of those major accomplishments are deeply reflective of what I believe and who I am. But I didn't consciously choose those things. I was right for them because I
Mm.
showed up as my authentic self.
That's interesting. So it's unfolding in front of you. You respond to it in the most authentic self. And if there is sort of a fit. If it's meant to be, it happens, and as a result of that, it continues to happen.
Yeah.
Um, which you were Diara. Is it
Oh,
Diara? Is it
Diara.
Diara? What am I saying? Diara. Diara from Detroit. You play a queer earth science teacher, right?
Yeah.
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 So what was that one of those situations? What drew you to that role?
That was the pinnacle of what I'm talking about, right? So
Yeah.
for example, I'll track us really quickly to Diara.
Yes.
So I had a cousin who was killed right around the time that I got Marvin Gaye in
I'm
Motown
sorry.
the Musical.
Okay.
Thank you. And so I got a chance to be Marvin Gaye on stage at a pinnacle turn in his life as an artist. He wanted to stop just being what society wanted him to be, and he wanted to do the album What's Going On. So when he cut that record, that was against the identity that people had known him as. And it was deeply personal, right? So for me, being able to sing What's Going On around the same time that my cousin was shot down and killed in Baltimore, Trayvon Martin had just happened as well around that same time. So we were, as a society, we were becoming a little bit more aware of the
Yeah.
policing of Black men and what was happening in terms of a lot of violence and racially institutionalized crime is what the world was starting to understand that Black people were going through in America. I got a chance to play Marvin Gaye during all that. Talk about a way to get it out, right? Then I got a little older and I started to understand what organizing looks like. And I started to look at the elections. And it was around the time that me and a friend started Indefined. And we were trying to find a profitable way to support nonprofits that supported young people and
Mm.
giving them a voice in the arts. And so we had t-shirts that said hate on them with a line through it and fear with a line through it. And we sold these shirts. And in a matter of a few months, we literally raised like $100,000 for various charities and
Wow.
organizations. I got a chance to play George Washington while I was doing that in my real life. So
Wow.
George Washington was this vessel through which I got to figure out what it looks like to lead something completely brand new. I'm trying to draw a parallel between what I'm experiencing in my real life and then the roles that show up for me, right? I get Diara from Detroit, and my friend in real life is Diara. She wrote this show. It's an amazing show if you haven't watched it. It's a comedy that's a mystery. This woman is getting a divorce, and to kind of get over the hump, she goes online and she finds this guy. They have the most amazing night ever, and then he ghosts her. And she's like, I'm amazing. Our night was amazing. There's no way he ghosted me. Something must have happened to him. And so she goes down into the underground of the Detroit kind of underworld to find this guy. And it turns out that it was based on like a true mystery that really happened in Detroit in real life.
Wow.
So my role, while I'm, freshly married to my husband, featured in the New York Times, talk about sharing your authenticity.
Wow.
Um, as I'm looking at the landscape and I'm trying to see what other Black queer masculine men, cisgender masculine presenting men are out there doing the work, I'm seeing my peers slowly start to be more visible. And my friend from 2007 writes a TV show and writes a character in my voice. So you talk about roles showing up. This role is the most authentic I've ever played because it's based on me. You know what I mean? So life will meet you where you are. And I
Yes.
know it sounds like I'm saying a lot of kind of circuitous, deep, foo-foo stuff.
No.
My grandmother would have said it like this: be present.
Yeah. Yes.
Like
That's it.
just
Yeah.
show up to life and be honest and present. And then from that place make decisions.
Yes.
And what I'm saying is in my decision making as a human, my art has reflected where I am.
That this is it just it lands so well. It hits home because you it, you don't resist. You don't resist. You essentially you're there, and what's in front of you, you deal with it, and it just continues to open up doors. And it's so funny that you mentioned the Marvin Gaye and George Washington. You star in some of the biggest stages in the world. And I was going to ask you, how do you prepare, for these roles that iconic and still bring your own truth into them? And you just answered it.
Oh, yeah. This is why I love art. Maybe life is art. You know what I mean? Maybe
Yeah.
maybe as I'm getting older, I'm becoming more sensitive. I feel like when I was younger, I wasn't this like, "Doo, doo, doo, doo." But I think as I get older
Yeah.
and life becomes more specific and more difficult, and we see what's happening in the world, I think my inner child understands something.
Mm,
And I think that it's something we see in pride parades. It's June, it's Pride Month.
yep.
And we see people waving rainbows and throwing glitter and smiling and bumping loud music and dancing. And we don't understand that that's an act of resistance.
Mm.
It is,
How so?
it's a defiant thing for you to show up how you really want to show up.
Mm.
It's a defiant thing for you to have joy in the midst of chaos.
Mm.
And I think that that's what I'm trying to point to in this kind of land the plane, Brian, long way is that when life presents itself and you don't resist and you stay open, there's an opportunity to see it from a positive lens. And you don't realize sometimes that you choosing to sing in the midst of racial injustice, civil injustice, you choosing to sing is an act of defiance because that's who you really are.
Yeah.
You don't
Wow.
dim your light just because you're dealing with the shadow. You show up and you don't resist. Keep shining your light when you show up. And just to make it specific, there's somebody that woke up this morning and they've had a really rough time with these kids and they love their kids, but their kids are driving them nuts. And it's really easy for a person who's under a lot of pressure to show up in a way that's not their authentic self.
Mm.
It's braver to take a breath.
Yeah.
It's braver as a kid who's frustrated and feels like nobody understands them to take a breath and regulate their emotions and make a decision from the most clear positive place that you can. And I think that's what artists are trying to do. I feel like that's what a lot of light workers and healers and social activists are trying to do. I think we're learning how to fight and at the same time still hold love. I think we're learning how to fight
Yeah.
and we're still trying to help our fellow man. We're still trying to fight, but we're finding love and joy and the reason why we're fighting. And that's how you hold the light up in the midst of the fight. I think it's happening politically. I think it's happening religiously. I don't know what this world is about to see in the next few years, but I know a lot of us are rising up with a lot of love. And for artists, we have a place to express it. And then the product of that expression we can give to people. And I hope that everybody finds their version of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and being you, if it hits somebody else's stuff, that's not your problem. And to me, it's if it's hitting me in a certain way, you address it because that person has nothing to do with me. And there will not be two people seeing reality exactly the same way because of the upbringing and the circumstances. So just accepting that and then just opening yourself up and just enjoying this very short time that we have on this earth.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, anytime you feel like dropping a line or spitting a few bars, you're allowed.
Thank
Did
you.
that
Thank you.
singing. Um, I
Okay.
was wondering, is there a project that you have done that really didn't get a lot of spotlight, but it
Mhm.
means a lot to you personally?
Yes, there's a project that, right, COVID really rocked the industry of Broadway, and we were really discovering and trying to figure out how do we come back from that. And George Floyd had also passed away and was murdered in front of us, and we watched him pass over and over and over again for so long. And so Broadway was trying to figure out what do we come back with. And there was one season of Broadway that came back, and we had probably the most amount of plays and musicals from people of color at one time. And I was in a
Mm,
play called Thoughts of a Colored Man by Keenan Scott II. And
mm,
it was not only was it all black men on stage, but it was the first play on Broadway historically that had as many people of color behind the scenes. And it was short lived because of COVID.
mm.
But Thoughts of a Colored Man was a really, really special project. You talk about stepping into your full identity. Um,
Yes.
it was so powerful, and I hope the world gets to see it one day. Maybe we'll bring it back, or maybe it'll transform into another form one day and be on television or a movie or something. But those stories were amazing.
Wow. So you co-founded and defined, was it to
Yeah.
help young people pretty much break free from limiting labels? What what's
Yeah.
what sparked that mission for you? Like why is that important to you?
I think it was my frustration of what I was seeing going on in politics. I mean, this was around the time of our current president's first election, and I just saw how divisive everything became, and how I felt like we were just coming from a world where I thought we were all coming together. I never thought that we would see a black president in my lifetime. I knew we would have
Mm,
one, but not in my lifetime. Just because I understood how real racism is. So, like, how can we have a black president and that be true, while my experience as a black man in America is also this other thing, right? So I was really excited in the fact that we had had this time, um, and now we were all of a sudden in a completely different world. And the way people were treating each other, it was just full of so much. So I wanted to kind of scream it from the rooftops, and that was the idea of putting labels on shirts. Um,
mm,
but after having this conversation with my friend Robert Rader, who co-founded Indefine with me, um, what we found is that the root of all those words was really just hate and fear.
yeah.
So let's just cross a line through the hate and through the fear. And we were very, very clear that us adults having our political wars and having our fights over power, we don't realize that in the wake of that are young people.
Mm,
And so there are young artists and young students that would come to Hamilton. And every Wednesday they would get on stage and they would express themselves in original raps and original songs. And I was thinking about how state to state and even nationally, so much arts funding was being pulled. And I saw basically the thing that saved me as a young person being taken away. And so we were trying to find early forms of how can I just help? How can I just help? How can I just help? And so we will partner with other organizations and find way to sell our shirts and host events and raise money, to give young people a voice. And art is to me one of my favorite ways that gives young people a voice. Um, Art freed me, and I know it can free somebody else. And so when I see that under attack, it makes me want to just take whatever's in my hand at the time and turn it towards helping, you know?
making yourself useful and purposeful. I love it.
Yeah, it's
So
completely selfish. It's
yeah.
completely selfish. All those people who are like, no, I'm like, listen, if you're ever having a bad day, help
Yes.
somebody else. I even had
Yes.
a friend of mine that said, even if you're ever struggling financially, bless someone else. Even if it's
Mhm.
just buying them a coffee or giving them 50 cents. There's something about the universe that responds to giving. It's like the law of giving. If you give, it shall be given to you. You know, that asking you shall receive kind of reciprocity law. However you want to spin it, I just believe in it. And so it's completely selfish. Like, one, I'm helping young people as much as I can because I'm kind of remembering when I was young and all the people who helped me and what I needed. So it's completely self-serving. I'm
Completely.
joking, but
I
but you know what
know.
I mean. I say all that to
Yeah.
say, I'm joking, but what I say all that to say is that giving also blesses the giver.
Mm.
Giving also blesses the giver in ways that sometimes are immeasurable. And so, yeah, I like
Yeah.
that this is the journey. I think you're doing a version of it too, you know, being on this podcast, talking to people, sharing people's stories, asking more difficult, more in-depth questions allows people to express themselves in a way that some viewer can watch one day and go, I've been trying to find the words for where
Mm.
I am or what I'm going through or what I want. And I watched this podcast and Denisa asked this question. And I'm so glad she asked because I finally saw myself or heard myself. I think that's why community is so important, you know? I think
Yes.
that's why older people used to sit outside at the park or on porches and share stories because it's in the sharing of stories that we heal. It's in the
Yeah.
sharing of stories that we grow. And so, I'm thankful that you have spaces like this for spaces, um, for people like me so that we can share our stories, you know?
Thank you. Thank you. And that's what keeps me going. It actually was Elias, my son after his passing. I thought, I wanted to keep his spirit alive, and he was sort of a go-lucky, happy-go-lucky kind of a guy who treated people just as human beings at the very core level, and always saw, the positive in everything. And he understood struggle, and so I thought, why don't I just I'm deeply curious, and I'm interested in stories. And I said, well, why don't I just start talking to people? And first, it was within a business community, and I said, let's just get rid of the labels and the titles, and really get to know who you are, and what you were afraid of, and what brought you here. And then it just sort of mushroomed, and
Yeah.
it really is to
Um,
raise the humanity, like what you're doing. You are all over the place. Now, how do you protect your peace in an industry that's always like pulling you in? I get that you're selective and it just you kind of allowing things to happen, but in a real life, like what's for you and DeVario,
yeah.
what's the reset button for you guys?
Oh my gosh. Reset buttons for us have been vacation and time off. The last couple years, I entered this relationship extremely busy, and so was he. But the last couple years have been a bit of a cocoon for me. I didn't realize that, doing 8 shows a week, schedule wise, is very different than doing a TV show, right? So I got all this time and I got all this space right after the first season of Diara, and we're going back to shoot second season in a bit, middle of this summer. But essentially, the way we keep it alive is making sure that connection and change and growth are
Mm.
things that we're making sure we're maintaining, and we're doing side by side and hand in hand. And I think when you have two people who are successful in their business, time becomes a real thing.
Yeah.
So we try not to go without seeing each other more than 2 3 weeks. um and we really really support each other in our individual journey, even though we're married. So that's the kind of couples answer for that. But I do still think even in a marriage, it's still very individual. For me, I need as much as I'm very free flowing and artsy fartsy, I think I am a little bit of an A-type personality. And I think for me, having spiritual principles that I can repeat every day, they really
Mhm.
ground me. So no matter whether I'm working and I'm going to set, or whether I'm going to a funeral, whatever life offers, I can wake up a little early and I can meditate.
Mm.
I can wake up a little early, and no matter what the day holds for me, I can write down 10 things I'm grateful for. I can wake up in the morning and I can write down 3 affirmations, 3 things that I believe I am, 3 things I believe I possess. And I can write down 3 things that I'm declaring, 3 things that I'm proclaiming, 3 things that I desire and I believe I can walk into. And I can give that day. And I think those are the kinds of steps that I do every single day that kind of hold a structure for me and a consistency for me, that's not about just supporting the health of my career or the health of my marriage, but the health of the person that has to participate in all of that. And
Mm.
so I'm learning how to put myself first by creating a spiritual practice for myself that keeps me grounded and that is consistent. And I don't know if everybody needs to operate that way, but for me, I need things that I can do consistently. And so that practice has just shifted my entire existence, probably since 2016, 2017. And so
You
that's what I do.
You hit another nail on the head. It's like you better yourself, you better the entire relationship instead of insisting on your partner to change is you growing. The way I look at it too in my marriage is we individually have a need to grow and learn and expand. And by doing that, then we're stronger as a couple, but we're not this.
Yeah.
And it's complementing rather than completing. And people don't understand that. It's this really unhealthy codependence, this fear of just like being grounded and being human as a whole human being you already are. And you bring that into the relationship, but the need to change, well, you work on yourself.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it.
And I think there's kind of a fear that's unspoken about how difficult growth and change can be, but also
Yeah.
how inevitable it is, right?
Mhm.
Um, I'm at that age right now where friends are losing grandparents and parents, and I lost my grandmother last year. My husband lost his grandmother last year, who was like his best friend.
Oh.
And it's one of those things where it's like, no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, no matter your race, your sorry about that. Somebody just called me. Can you guys see me? Yeah. No matter your race, no matter your religion, whatever the situation is, life and death is such a real thing.
Yeah.
And I think that what people don't realize is that growth and change is inevitable because someone's gonna die. And it's
Hmm.
not a morbid thought, but we're all gonna go through the passageway of grief. And I
Yeah.
don't think that people realize that, like, when you lose someone who's been on the planet the entire time you've been alive, it changes everything. When you lose someone who's younger than you, like your child, it changes you. And I think that if we're not willing to hold each other's hand through growth and through change, it's how we become separated.
Yeah.
We've got to be willing to step into the unknown, and we've got to be willing to step into the fear, and we've got to be willing to step into um, the whirlwind that change is sometimes with our partner in an open way. You are allowed to grow. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to be something that I did not marry.
Mm.
But what is important for me is to be by your side in all of that.
Yeah.
So that as you grow and you change and you weather the storm of life shifting you, I want to be by your side so that as you grow and you change, I grow and I change just by observing your growth. I grow and I change by learning how I'm growing and I'm changing, about how you're showing up for me and what that triggers me
Yeah.
into. Hello, let's talk real married people. Sometimes your partner triggering you
Yes.
is your impetus for growth and change. It's your
There
opportunity
you
to
go.
see things from a different perspective. I don't recommend marriage to everybody. I don't. I
Right.
don't recommend marriage to everybody. Everybody thinks they want to be married. You should be married. You should be married if I'm talking about soulmate kind of marriage though, not
Right.
like,
Yeah.
but if you really want that kind of love, you can have that kind of marriage, but it will try you
Oh
because
yeah.
you will become your best self and they will become their best selves if you are really committed to that journey, which is not always an easy one.
No.
But I found the right one because listen, we down for it. We're not we're not going
Good.
nowhere. Roll up your sleeves.
Yep.
Here we go. We're in it together, and it takes that. It takes that. It takes that.
Do you binge any shows? Do you binge watch any shows?
We do. We binge watch a few shows. I'm trying to figure out what we're binging now. We're binging a show called Forever
Mm.
by Marv Rockakeel that's on Netflix. It's a beautiful kind of coming of age romance.
Okay.
We love that show. I tried to get him to binge watch Game of Thrones back in the day, and he just got stuck. He couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. Um,
That's a tough one.
but yes, we binge watch shows all the time. What about you two? What are your
Oh,
favorite shows right now?
we're into Mobland, and we watch The Suits, and
Yeah.
what's his name? Oh, Forrest Whitaker in the Godfather of Harlem.
Godfather Harlem. Yeah,
Yeah.
great show. Well,
Yeah, yeah,
everybody
yeah.
go binge watch Diara from Detroit. I think you can find it
Yes.
on,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
BET
cannot. I cannot.
Plus. You can find it. I think you can still find it on Amazon. And it'll connect you, but it's called Diara from Detroit, and it's a great ride. And it's also a great binge. It's only 8 episodes. It's fantastic.
Oh, good. No, no, definitely. That's on top of the list. What are any upcoming projects that you have going on?
Oh wow! So Diara from Detroit is filming season 2. That's like the major, most exciting thing right now that's on the plate. And I'm writing. I'm writing and producing a few projects, and so I don't want to talk too much about them because
Yeah.
the signs and things. But there's some exciting things that I'm creating. And so as I'm growing as a person, as I'm growing in my marriage, as I'm growing in my art, I'm also growing in my business.
Mm.
So, I'm trying to apply a lot of the things that I talked about today to what it means to scale and expand a creative business. And so that's the new journey for me. And it's fun. It's fun. I'm learning a lot. Yeah.
That's great. Wow. Okay. Drop any lines?
I'm trying to think. We already got DR from Detroit, which is the major thing to push right now. I think we're good.
Yeah.
I think I'm good.
Um,
Yeah.
do you feel like singing
Yeah,
for us?
we can sing a little something.
Yeah. Do some
Yeah.
some.
I didn't warm up today, but there has been a song that's been on my heart all morning. And Sam Cooke sang it, and it goes like this. I was born by the river in a little tent. Oh, and just like that river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know A change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will.
Wow. Thank you. Man,
Yeah.
this is incredible. Hey, any parting thoughts for our young up and coming artists?
My parting thought for young up and coming artists, my parting thought for adult artists, my parting thought for anybody that's watching this that's an artist at heart is not only do we need to keep going, keep discovering how you express yourself in the journey. That is your art. So keep going, but keep discovering how you express yourself in the journey that is life, because that is your art.
Wow. Bryan, this was incredible. And I want to thank you for showing up with so much honesty and you're bringing your heart into this. This is real. This is
Yeah, thank
wow,
you.
very moving. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for doing the same and creating space for me to do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I
And
can't wait to
for
watch it.
oh yes, no, our viewers and listeners, definitely be sure to check out the links below and visit indeed.org to support the movement. Very important. And make sure you subscribe to Beyond the Bar podcast. And until next time, stay curious and stay inspired.